Like his forefathers, the new Sultan, Mehmed II, had long eyed this prize. 30 years before, his father had tried to take the city and failed. Mehmed would prepare better.
In March 1452, Mehmet Bey the Turk set about building a fine castle 6 miles from Constantinople, towards the mouth of the Black Sea. It had 14 towers, of which the 5 principal ones were covered in lead and very strongly built. And it was made for the express purpose of taking the city of Constantinople.
Towering over the straits of the Bosporus, this citadel blocked any ship from sailing into Constantinople. The Turks called their new fortress the Throat Cutter. Surrounded and outnumbered, the defenders of Constantinople placed their trust in a double wall, 100 feet wide, surrounded by a moat. Against the Turks, it had always proved impregnable. By sea, the city was protected by only a single wall, but it too was unapproachable. A heavy iron chain, slung across the narrow stretch of water called the Golden Horn, sealed off the harbor from Turkish vessels. On April 2nd, 1453, the first troops came into sight of Constantinople.
The Sultan approached and placed his forces so that they extended from one sea to another.
On a hill near the city, the Sultan made his camp, ringed by thousands of his warriors.
The ground was completely invisible, being covered with Turks, particularly the Janissaries, who were the fiercest of all the Turkish soldiers.
The Turks unleashed a thunderous bombardment. Huge chunks of the city's walls collapsed. Under cover of darkness, the defenders rebuilt them. The Turks fared no better by sea. Their first attempt to capture the Golden Horn ended in disaster. Christian galleys showered them with burning arrows. Many ships were lost, along with 12,000 men. Enraged, the Sultan had his admiral deposed and flogged, and distributed his possessions among the Janissaries. As dawn broke on April 22nd, the Christians in Constantinople witnessed an act of sorcery, boats sailing on land. Since Mehmed's ships could not get past the chain guarding the Golden Horn, they would go around it. With horror, the Christians watched as the Turkish fleet slithered into their harbor. Bukri Haydar knew the great assault was coming. His spirits soared. Allah would make a special place in paradise for the first Muslim to set foot in Constantinople. All night, the Janissaries prayed and celebrated.
1 hour after dark, the Turks began to light a terrifying number of fires, much greater than they had lit on the 2 previous nights. But worse than this was their shouting, which was more than we Christians could bear.
At dawn, they heard a chilling sound. The Janissary musicians beating out the march of attack.
next day came. The cymbals began to sound, and the pipers and trumpeters joined in, giving the signal for assault.
After several hours of desperate fighting, the first wave gave up, exhausted. The Sultan turned to his Janissaries.
My Janissaries, my children, you have shown your bravery wherever I have campaigned. Now it is through you that the city will be captured.
All now hung on them. They advanced, not rushing like the others, but keeping their ranks in perfect order in the face of arrows and stones, unbroken, undaunted.
The Sultan himself rode out with a great array of troops. He chose to fight in front of the breach in the walls with a contingent of brave young Janissaries, and there were more than 10,000 of them, fighting with the courage of lions.
Vying for glory, the Janissaries hacked their way through the breach. Christians were pitted against the Christian-born, now fighting for Islam. The cry went up, "The city is taken." Having won honor, the Janissaries now sought plunder. Decades later, the Turks would still refer to men who owned wealth above their station as one who took part in the siege of Constantinople. The Sultan moved the Ottoman capital to Constantinople, renamed it Istanbul, and ushered in a golden age for the empire. Mehmet built a magnificent palace called Topkapi. In its outer courtyards, the Janissaries trained.